Hi everybody, today I want to talk to you about a concept that really did change my life, unburdened me, reduced my stress dramatically. Today I'm going to talk about the concept of minimalism. But first let me tell you a story. When I was in London I met, I think arguably would be said, a pretty wealthy set of people. And when we got together they would always talk about the cars they had, the stuff they owned, their second houses and so on. This stuff didn't seem to bring them very much happiness. Why is that? Well, there are several reasons, but first let's go back to the absolute basic principle. Human beings are social animals. And for us, our position in the social hierarchy, well, our brains are very sensitive to it. And so one of the most stressful things that can happen to a human being is feeling that they're either low in the social hierarchy or, probably even worse, their position is dropping in the social hierarchy. Now, in a materialistic society, which to be honest we do live in, actually there is a sense that the more you have, the more you are. And that drives us into the spiral of consumption. But why is this a bad place to be? It's a bad place to be for a few reasons. Number one, consumption doesn't last. The feeling you get of getting one over on someone else or of the thrill of getting a new object disappears very quickly. So you always have to buy and buy in order to maintain that feeling. And you actually have to buy more and more and more because the dopamine or that feeling wears off. So you have to constantly raise the stakes, and that traps you in a cycle of consumption and working for a salary that instantly goes out the door. The second and probably even worse reason is the following. When your self-worth and your position in the social hierarchy is determined by consuming and by objects, you're in the most unstable and fragile position possible. Why are those people, the people I talked about in London, why are they so anxious? Because they know, and all of us know, that deep down we will lose everything we've ever owned. You buy a fancy car, in 1 year's time it's depreciated in value, in 2 years' time someone's probably knocked it or you've pranged it against something, in 3 years' time it's obsolete. Everything you do and will ever own, you will lose, and we'll all lose everything in the long run. And so where you hitch your identity and your social position to purchasing, to objects, and to the accumulation of wealth, you will always have that deep stress and anxiety that the very next day it can go out of the door. Note currently the problem we're having in the stock market. What about the opposite? What about if you don't consume? If you try and live a more minimal lifestyle with fewer objects, only the objects you really need? Well, that's what I tried to do. When I came to China 4 or 5 years ago, I got rid of 90% of my stuff and I felt a tremendous unburdening and relief. Why? Consuming is time consuming. It takes a lot of time to buy stuff and then upkeep it and then always inventory it and then replace it, and you're always thinking about it. Without all that stuff, I had much more time for my personal relationships, but also for studying, for reflection, for philosophy, for enjoying life. Second, you can't lose what you don't own. I don't worry about my material possessions because I actually don't have very many of them, and that for me is a very comfortable position to be. And third, it teaches you self-confidence. It teaches you to look beneath the surface rather than constantly comparing yourself on metrics that can never be satisfied, where you can never win at, such as wealth and property and consumption. You look inwards to more spiritual or perhaps more philosophical or more meaningful ways of giving meaning to your life. So hopefully I've persuaded everybody that living a more minimal life is desirable, but what does that actually mean and how do you do it? Minimal does not mean live like a monk. What it does mean is that you do not consume beyond what you truly need to be happy or comfortable. And how do you achieve this? Number one, the 80-20 rule applies here. 20% of your stuff you use 80% of the time. So for the other 80% of your stuff, think, do you really need it? And I constantly go through every few months getting rid of stuff that I don't really need. 2, before you buy an object, think about it. Do you really need it? Is it going to fall into that 20% of items? Maybe take a cool down period, have a walk around before you click buy. 3rd, decomplexify, declutter, and that includes things like your mobile devices where you may have hundreds of time-consuming apps that you don't really need. 4, be around people that think the same way. If you're in a social circle, and frankly a lot of social circles are, where you find yourself competing on consumption metrics, where you find yourself comparing wealth, even subtly, these are probably not the right people to be around. Just be with people who enjoy life. 5, do spend money, do acquire stuff, for things that really matter, for what I call intrinsic pursuits, pursuits that you would do if nobody else was watching. So for me, for example, I do spend quite a bit on sports stuff because that's where all my friends are. It matters a lot to me and it brings a lot more to my life rather than just simply consuming to make myself feel better or to show off for other people. Maybe all these rules could be summarized best by a Greek philosopher, Epicurus, and he has the following quote for us. Do not spoil what you do have by desiring what you have not. Remember that what you have now was once among the things you only hoped for.